Thank you to my panel for joining me. We have Lucid Insight, MLB, right? Dapper Labs / the Nifty newsletter. I guess most of you would be subscribers. Foam Protocol, and OpenSea. So thank you for making the time today. We're going to talk about, I'll ask some questions about adoption and traction, and some questions about the individual platforms. We want to hear some data and get some data points out there. And then we'll do a bit of future gazing and try and figure out what the future of NFTs is. My first question is around displaying NFTs. What are the coolest ways that you guys have come across for people to display their tokens or their collectibles? And that might include a wallet or even things like the mural, fine art display that is downstairs.
Well, where we want to end up with our MLB license, so we're officially licensed Major League Baseball. Baseball cards on the blockchain. This is the way to think about us. It's we're reinventing, the baseball card for a digital native who doesn't want physical tchotchkes. Official license with MLB and MLB Players Association. I think with us, our display, we want to provide APIs for it to be displayed wherever they want it to be displayed, but our kind of inevitable goal is to get to native apps on iOS and Android where people can view the stuff in AR and look at it how they want. But at the end of the day, it's sort of the idea is they can look at it however they want. If they want to look at it in a particular wallet, they can do that too. It's fine.
So I think right now in general, I don't think that collectibles right now are kind of universally viewable. Right now between gaming collectibles and other collectibles, there's just really no good way to view them. Wallets are using the OpenSea API for the most part to kind of display them, so thank you OpenSea for that.
No problem.
And but something that's also been kind of coming up recently is the idea of digital fashion, and being able to kind of show off a digital piece of clothing. So tomorrow we're actually auctioning off a digital piece of clothing using partnership with the Fabricants and also Johanna. So that'll be really exciting. So now we can actually have an NFT displayed on a physical human being as well that's used through an AR filter. So now we have this concept of viewing actual digital collectibles, but how that actually ties into the real world is really fascinating as well. And this is kind of the first time we're starting to see this intersection between the digital and the physical world.
Sorry, a follow-up question there. How do you view the digital clothing? Is that what app do you use to actually view that?
So if you actually own the collectible, you'll be able to own it. You'll be able to view it yourself. Otherwise, you'll be able to view it on platforms like OpenSea or any other wallet.
So at Foam, we've recently integrated social profiles via 3-box identity so that users could claim an identity or pseudonymous identity. And with that, we have a leaderboard. So Foam is about mapping, so it's kind of tracking activity or how much people have won. And we also started to give out badges for example, cartographer of the month or most active voter, et cetera. And so with that, we, via 3-box, people can add these badges to their kind of profile, and it kind of serves as a kind of soft firm of reputation so that you saw somebody challenged a point and you want to understand if this is legitimate or not, but you see that challenger has all of these badges that they have only obtained by working for the protocol. And so for us, that's pretty cool to have a way for people to kind of show their achievements in the kind of system.
But then to actually see the badges, is there a particular, does that universally appear no matter what wallet you're using? Or?
No, not necessarily. So it automatically appears via the 3-box right now. So that's how it's works on the leaderboard and this kind of curator tool set. So that's where the integration comes from there. It doesn't necessarily mean it shows up everywhere. We could support it in the map directly to have the user profiles and badges there, and it could show up more and more places.
Yeah, for us, one of the interesting ones I've seen recently was there's a lot of talk about displaying NFTs in virtual worlds. So Decentraland is starting to do this. There's also a site called Cryptovoxels where you can go and explore a virtual world. You can see your Cryptokitties show up, and they'll have a frame around them if they're an actual NFT. It's pretty cool. I think, yeah, a good way to think about the state of the world for NFT display at the moment is it's kind of like developing a new file format where, like with JPEGs, the desktop computer has to support it. It's just bytes at the end of the day, right? And you can send JPEGs around. Like there's all these primitives that exist, and I think NFTs are just starting to introduce those, right? Like it should be as easy to send an NFT as it is to send a JPEG over email, right? And so similarly, like it should be super easy to display it in a virtual world or on a wallet or wherever. And it's starting to get a little closer to that world, I think.
Gotcha. I mean, so I think moving on a little bit from the collectible aspect, I wanted to ask you guys about, kind of the usability and the utility aspect. And I guess one question I have is like, why aren't NFT games any fun? Like, can someone actually, just describe like, tell me about an NFT game that's as fun as like, Angry Birds or what have you?
Yeah, I think that's NFT games have not really been around that long, right? This is a very, very new space. It was sort of defined by Cryptokitties. I think that there's a swing between centralization and decentralization that we're in right now. And, I know that the theme of this conference is decentralize everything. It's a very, it's very much kind of the vision of Ethereum. For us, we think there's a delicate balance that we have to find in games. And I use the example of Dungeons and Dragons. If you ever play Dungeons and Dragons, you need a good dungeon master who custodians the game. If you don't have a good dungeon master, you're not going to have a good game of Dungeons and Dragons. The idea that a game can, like any creative item, could sort of take on a life of its own, it's really hard to imagine where we get there. So in that sense, where we started was our game was called MLB Crypto Baseball last year. And we were very popular among a select group of crypto enthusiasts who also like baseball. Now we've renamed the game to MLB Champions. We're trying to go broader. We're trying to go more off-chain. We're also trying to use platforms that traditional gamers use, like Steam and iOS and Android. So I think that's, we secure the items of value to Ethereum, but nobody wants to pay a nickel to fire a laser in our game. So that's kind of where we're at as a company.
Can you tell us, share some statistics from your game, like what's the most, the highest value transaction, some volume stuff?
Sure. So yeah. So what you have is a very narrow group of deep players at this point. I think Cryptokitties has the same situation where, we have a space game called CSC in addition to our MLB game, and the space station in that game sold for $54,000. The same player spent $100,000 in our game in various ships. In our MLB game, the highest single player was a Bryce Harper, sold last year for $7,000. So that's great. I mean, the hardest thing as a game studio is to figure out how to make something that people value and want to play. But then the challenge is, how do you go broad, right? And for us, the idea that people are going to separate themselves from their iPhone or their Android phone, and they're going to, abandon the way they traditionally game, a la consoles, a la Steam, a la Android, iPhone. We just don't think that's going to happen. So we're kind of trying to, and we'll swing as the market demands. I mean, the consumer will speak at the end of the day, and we're going to adjust accordingly. But right now, it seems to be the onboarding process should not involve 15 steps of crypto. So we accept credit cards this season. Last season, it was all Ethereum. I mean, you had to have, first step, somebody came to our website, it's install MetaMask, and here's the 10 steps, and get a Coinbase account, here's the steps. This season, it's give us, sign up, put your credit card in. I know Dapper's doing something similar with their Dapper wallet, so I think this is just where we'll see it. Focus on fun.
Yeah, so that's a nice little introduction there, I guess. So Dapper kind of, as before, Randy was talking about that scale between centralization and decentralization. Dapper really believes that there are no such thing as trade-offs. There shouldn't be this trade-off between decentralization and centralization. You can kind of have both, and that's the reason why we created the Dapper wallet. We're really focused on having that decentralized component because it's really important. The moment that you kind of tip the scale to centralization, it kind of, there's really no point of the blockchain at that point. So our games are really focused around creating a really fun game mechanic rather than kind of a complete game, and letting developers kind of fill in the gaps, right? So it's a very different approach than what other blockchain games are kind of doing. Most of them are creating their own layer 2 solutions and creating very complete games. But our focus on creating a really good game mechanic on layer 1 is really what we're focused on. And so that's going to be a more long tail approach. So the reason why they're not fun right now is because we need that ecosystem kind of built around a lot of those fun game mechanics, right? But once that's kind of complete, then developers are now helping us creating those really fun ecosystems as well.
So do you mean things like, with Cryptokitties, there was like Kitty Race and other things that were not built by Dapper Labs, but just by...
Yeah, exactly. So supporting that ecosystem, the Kittyverse, as much as possible to create that fun experience for all those Cryptokitties players is really important.
Yeah, so the foam protocol is not a game, but we do have people building games on top of the protocol, and they seem to be pretty fun, or people seem to like them. So the game that we have going on now is called is a scavenger hunt, and kind of it's like a mystery game. So the way it works is that clues are posted to Twitter, and it's in collaboration with Block Cities, which is a NFTs of buildings or random buildings. And so, for example, it'll be kind of a mystery hunt to solve the clue of the location and then add the point to the foam map via the protocol. And then you can win this NFT of the building. So it combines a lot of different skills of like solving clues, looking through history, the map, adding the right location. And then people who like the project so much the first time around built tools for it that now. So these are Cody, who's standing here, works at Microsoft, in his free time also made a logic app on the cloud that can read the foam API and trigger tweets for clues, as well as issue the NFT to the winner. So that's all kind of automated and being built on top of our protocol. And there's going to be a special hunt next week, 5 days long. So if anyone wants to play, let us know if you think it's fun.
And then do the players actually help? Are they doing work for the protocol?
So by extension of playing the game to win the NFT, they are doing work for the foam protocol. And so when we did the holiday treasure hunt, which was 10 days, 10 buildings, so 10 correct points, we saw about 500 points be added in that time period. So people were guessing and adding, and even if they guessed the clue wrong, they still added a valid point to the map.
Yeah, I would echo kind of what's been said, but I think at a high level, we're just very early, and I think people are going to attack it from all angles, right? So there's going to be sort of centralized players that have asset management on the blockchain, but everything's just an off-chain game. I think that's totally fine. That's a valid approach. There's going to be projects that take a lot more on-chain and leverage that. And I think there's these interesting. What I'm really excited about is games that blur the lines between gaming and real economies. So I think Decentraland is certainly one that fits into that category. It's literally just a virtual world, right? And it's a place where potentially a lot of people could spend a lot of their time, build businesses, like socialize, all of those things. And that's much more than a game. And if you have property rights in that type of ecosystem, I think it could end up being much more interesting than just like a fun game to play. So I think maybe fun is of course important for gaming, but in some of these sort of like niche, highly crypto ends of the spectrum, maybe fun isn't even the right benchmark.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. and that's a great follow-up. I think actually John gave me this question earlier. Like you mentioned, for example, your game is played by a very niche kind of group of people. I wonder if each of you can just talk a bit more about the demand side of the equation, right? Who are your users? Do you have kind of like a user profile? And to some extent, this affects kind of the whole of crypto, right? Like, the supply side, people keep doing better wallets, etc. But then who are the people using it? So, yeah, tell us who your users are.
I think what we've gathered is our traditional users are actually traditional baseball card collectors who are kind of, they see this as an exciting new way to engage with Major League Baseball. They can, it's a fantasy-esque game where you watch the game and your collectibles are generated off of the events that happen in the game. So if Bryce Harper hits a grand slam and you have a Bryce Harper with a grand slam ability, you have a chance to get that very rare collectible. And if it happens to win the World Series, maybe it's even more rare. And then what it's worth is all supply demand. Just what does the marketplace want? And so, at the end of the day, we're kind of looking at this as, what is this doing for the consumer? Like in our games in particular, and that swing of on-chain, off-chain, we're unapologetically largely off-chain. We use traditional games databases. The graphics are obviously rendered off-chain. The items of value are secured to the chain because what the players want in our game is the ability to own it. And what they mean by ownership is one of these sort of terms that gets thrown around, but it's very hard to define, actually. You think you own your house, but if they want to build a freeway through your house, guess what? You don't really own your house. So ownership in our games is, can you resell it? Can you experience if it goes up in value or goes down in value? Do other people envy you? Can you exert dominance in your sports knowledge because of the way you've played this game? These are the things that the Ethereum's solving for our sort of typical baseball fan. Because last season, again, it was crypto baseball. You had to have Ethereum to play. You had to have MetaMask. We saw the overwhelming feedback from our traditional baseball fans was, we love the fact that it's using blockchain, but do not lead with blockchain. Like, please, much like EVE Online was called EVE Online, 20 years ago when it came out, Fortnite is just called Fortnite. It's not Fortnite Online. For us, the digital ownership adds a quality to the games that wouldn't otherwise be there, but it doesn't replace a good game experience. It's a feature, quite honestly.
Thank you. Joon, we're going to have to call it there. Sorry. Are we out of time? Okay.
Are you guys going to be hanging out up here if people have any follow-up questions for you? Sorry to cut you short there. All right, but everyone, let's give a last round of applause for our panelists. Thanks.